It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor P.Z. Myers.
Okay, boy, this is difficult. Once again, I'm up here again. Are you bored of me yet? Well, and then the other thing, of course, is I'm getting in the way of the hockey game. I was afraid I'd be lynched, but well, we'll get by. Okay, well, what I want to talk about today is it's a little bit of something about this atheist community and the kinds of goals we have. But first, I have to premise it with a little bit of a disclaimer, because I'm going to be using the word "we" a whole bunch tonight. As in, we atheists think that, and I already know ahead of time that nobody will agree with everything that I'm going to say, and some of you will disagree strongly with bits and pieces, and some of you may disagree strongly with the entire thing I say, and that's okay, that's accepted, because atheism doesn't have a central dogma or creed. Now, that means, though, that what I'll be saying is things like, we atheists value free thought, right? Yeah, mostly, okay. But here I am, I'm saying we atheists again, the groupthink thing. But anyway, you see what I did there, that I just know still that somewhere out there, there's somebody with this little stubborn set to their jaw, and they're sitting there thinking, well, I don't value free thought. I bet you, just because you're goddamn atheists, that's the way you go. And that's fine also, because we can argue later about it, and we atheists also like to argue. Yeah, if anybody wants to sing out, I don't, that's okay. Anyway, I'm not speaking as a herd leader who's telling you what to think. I'm only going to be trying to describe the consensus I've gleaned from years of watching and working with us atheists. And there's a real community growing here, and I have a sense that alongside our usual mavericky, obstinate attitudes, there's also a recognition that we need to work together to achieve a goal of changing society for the better. And man, I really love working with atheists. We've got the attitude I like. So let me give some examples here. There have been efforts to step up our visibility with signs all across the continent. Recently, American Atheists put up one. So they put that up on a busy freeway entering into Manhattan, and the Catholic League immediately afterwards rushed to put up their own billboard, reassuring commuters that Jesus was real. And then the Coalition of Reason put up a billboard last week in Fresno that said, don't believe in God? Join the club. And within 2 days, some vandal had rushed to slap paint over the word don't. Isn't that cute? Then right here in Kelowna, of course, as you all have heard, someone ripped off signs on local buses that said, there's probably no God, so now stop worrying and enjoy your life. So this has been going on, but what's really made me happy is how everyone reacts to this. I've talked with Dave Silverman and Fred Edwards and with Bill here, and no one is moaning about persecution, and no one is feeling oppressed. They may feel a little annoyed that they got to go to the effort of fixing these things up, but everyone has this kind of mad glitter in their eyes and is gleefully chuckling over how effective the ads are and how people are sitting up and taking notice and how the other side is clearly discomfited by the simple fact of our existence. It's freaking great, right? So everyone's talking about doing more, and I swear there must be some kind of competition going on to come up with ever more innocuous, positive slogans so that Christians look like even bigger twits when they have a hissy fit over them. I know they didn't like my idea for a good sign. But that's just me. And then also I find another sign of vindication for atheism in my email inbox. I really appreciate the quality of my critics. For instance, I get lots of obscene stuff sent my way. This is one of the milder examples. I also have the most amazing collection of gay porn you've ever seen. I mean, it's for some reason, homophobes they just see my existence as some sort of an excuse to surf the web for lots of explicit gay pornography to forward to me. And usually it's got some clever comment with like, how do you like that, bitch? You know, you can just tell they're, oh, I got him now. He's getting aroused. Send him some more. Okay, well, then there's another side to this. There are the death threats. They get rather explicit sometimes. And I got to warn you all you've got to do is be rude to one little cracker and you get on this really awesome Catholic hate list. And you just get floods of this stuff. You're not laughing at this one. What's the matter with you people? This is hilarious.
They thought you meant white guy when you said cracker.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway. And then there are these weird, angry tirades I get. This is just one example of them. Yes, can you read that? That's his wall of text. I get this kind of stuff all the time. I don't even try to extract any kind of sense from these sorts of emails because I don't think there is any there. But do you know how I react to this torrent? I'm not rushing off and hiding under my bed. I don't feel paranoid. I'm not outraged and offended, although I am a little envious of the washboard abs in some of those pictures I get sent to me. I'm amused. I'm laughing my ass off. I'm also posting some of these to the web and watching thousands of people laugh at them too. And that's the thing, we're living in this crazy, antic world where many silly people believe in many silly things, and I have that confirmed for me every day. But at the same time, I'm also part of this community of rational people who are just as amused as I am, and I get regular confirmation there is hope, there are more of us, and our numbers are growing. So look around you at the people in this room and realize this. This is one of your communities. We're all in this together, and we can look at nonsense like this on that wall, or we can read stories about people stealing atheist signs, or we can turn on the television and watch jerks with giant heads like Bill O'Reilly share their sophisticated worldview that the tide goes in and the tide goes out, therefore God. And then you look around at the people here and that's all absurd. We are here together and we can all take joy in the fact that we're not alone. So you should feel good. I know I do. But then there's something else that is weirdly discombobulating about how people react to atheism. How often have you been chided for being such an angry, bitter person? Right? You don't have Jesus in your heart. You must be very sad. And meanwhile, Christianity is portrayed as this faith of sweetness and light, making a joyful noise unto the world and celebrating an eternity in paradise. But have you ever noticed what kind of stuff they put up on their walls? I mean, and what about the torture porn in their movies? I think they're trying a little too hard to distract us from the truth about their rather grim death cult. They are not the happy people. They're the ones who celebrate things like people being nailed to trees. And it's a complete misrepresentation of our respective positions. So here, let me show you a more accurate version. I like this picture. This is a photo of a couple of people. The laughing man there on the left is Sanal Adamaraku. He's an atheist, and he's president of Rationalist International. And the angry fellow on the right, that's Pandit Sundar Sharma. He's a tantric sorcerer. Ooh. And he's trying to kill Sanal with magic. Live on Indian TV a couple of years ago. It went on for hours. This was a hugely entertaining piece to a lot of people who are sitting there watching this engrossed because there's Pandit. He's doing all this chanting and he's doing this magic. He's doing things like sticking needles in dolls made of dough and he's setting them on fire and he's writing Sanal's name on pieces of paper and throwing it into the flames, and he's dancing around him and waving his hands. It's a very spectacular show. It got a little boring. I mean, 2 hours of that is pretty bad. But what he was doing is he was saying he could kill anyone without touching them using his magic tricks. But the key thing about this is look at Sanal there. He's just standing there laughing. The entire time, he's just having this great time with this guy. He is still alive, by the way. It still hasn't worked. So this is the way we should feel, that when someone tells you that they'll pray for you or that you'll go to hell if you don't think like they do, I want you to feel just one thing, and that's this laughter bubbling up from deep inside. And I'm telling you right now, let it out. Right in front of their faces. Go ahead. It feels good, and it tells them exactly what you think of their position. Ridicule and laughter are two most powerful tools against the folly of religion. Now, I'm a proponent of this idea that religion is a kind of terrible parasite that preys on intrinsic inclinations to see agency in the world around us, and also this attempt we have to try and find solace in wishful thinking. And I have a metaphor, which is mine, which I would like to use to explain what I find awful about religion, and that is that religion is like a tapeworm. Now, this is a civilized part of the world with good public hygiene, I suspect, right? So most of us are personally unfamiliar with tapeworms, but all you need to know is that they're a repulsive parasite that colonizes your intestines and grows by consuming a tithe of the food that you consume, which should remind you right away of many priests. You get them by consuming unsanitary food tainted with the feces of an infected individual. Yes, dinner's over. It's okay. I can mention this now, right? Fortunately, they're really easy to get rid of. There's a pill of tapeworm poison that's harmless to you, but all you do is you swallow some of this biltricide, and a few hours to days later, you feel a squirminess in your guts as the worm dies, it goes into its death throes, and then you go to the bathroom, and its slimy dead corpse slithers out of your anus and lies there in the toilet. Everyone's hanging on to their dinner, great. Anyway, so it comes out, and it looks like this filmy, discarded condom for a giant with a penis with the diameter of a pencil, and it's all coiled up in there. Yes, I have just compared God to a used condom for a pencil dick. So, yes, the talk's going uphill, right? Now, it's disgusting, I know, but how do you feel about this? You know how you would feel if this happened to you, if you got rid of a tapeworm. You'd feel relieved. You'd feel better. You'd feel happier to be rid of it. If you've never been infested with such a parasite, which most of us haven't, you're all quite pleased with yourself and entirely satisfied that never, ever in your life do you want to experience such an unpleasantness. So we have no desire to embrace this thing. And here we feel mostly the same way about religion. Good riddance, or perhaps keep it away from me. We have exactly the same feeling towards religion that we would toward this lovely parasite. But we're living in a strange world where this metaphor actually does kind of break down. Imagine a country where the majority carry a heavy tapeworm load and are a little bit bitter about those people who manage to free themselves of their parasite. So there you are in the bathroom, gazing in disgust at the dead invertebrate lying in the toilet bowl, and your nosy neighbor peers over your shoulder, because that's what these kinds of neighbors do, right? And he says, okay, mighty fine worm you got there. Shame that it died. You must be grieving now. You ought to fish it out, put it in a shoebox, and reverently bury it under the rose bush. What was its name, by the way? Because in this imaginary country, they've got a great deal of respect for your tapeworm that you're carrying. Now, if you're me, I'd say, I dub thee Jesus, and I'd flush the toilet. But we live in a culture where we're constantly told to respect the tapeworm, that it's a precious part of our heritage. The fact that you're happy to be free is obvious evidence that you're bitter and angry. Even if you're not, you're feeling pretty darn good. Yeah, this thing's gone from me now, but that's obvious evidence that you are a very angry person who hates your tapeworm. And worse, you shed this parasite and your friends and family will try to reinfect you. It's like you're surrounded by people constantly trying to feed you fecally contaminated, undercooked pork. And I react the same way to proselytizers. That's simply disgusting. But they're carrying the parasite, and nasty and wasteful as it is, they can't bear the thought that someone else has managed to escape the joy of a resident platyhelminth. Now, I recently received a request from a reader Mark from Vancouver, a real Canadian. He wrote to me asking for advice. He's experienced this phenomenon. He's escaped conservative Christianity, but now he's getting this constant pressure from his family to re-enter the fold. Has anybody ever felt that? Yeah, it's a pretty common syndrome here. So many of you know this feeling. You're the atheist, the outsider, the evil one. You go to the family reunion, and it's like, you say, hello, Uncle Matt, and this is what you get, right? Evil one. We must do something about them. But there's another nefarious level of scumbaggery that can go on here. And this is what Mark was writing to me about, that they will recruit the kids to help them out. And this is what Mark got. He got a letter, a sweet little letter from his 10-year-old nephew. And here it is. His nephew's gone off to church school of some sort, and I noticed God told him to write a letter. Well, that's the first weird thing. Little 10-year-old kids are getting direct messages from God. Oh, okay. Anyway, he asked him to write a prayer for him, and so there's this prayer. Dear Jesus, I pray for Uncle Mark that he will become a follower of you, and I pray that he will not go to hell and suffer the consequences of fire and sun and know you. I pray that I will keep on praying for him and that you will touch his heart forever, and that if he becomes a Christian, that he will teach others about Jesus, and that his eyes will be open to the truth of your words. Amen. That is so fucked up. I mean, here's this little kid worrying about hellfire and regretting that his uncle is going to end up burning for eternity before his eyes. And, well, maybe he'll cry a little bit over this, right? But he's going to write a letter and say he's going to pray for his uncle. Hell is a sufficiently evil concept on its own, but dragging the impressionable brains of young children through the muck of your guilt and indoctrination and personal nightmares is a whole nother level of wickedness. It's like the anti-Santa myth, and we're poisoning our kids' brains with this. So Mark was writing to ask me what to do in this ugly situation. And the thing is that he gave the answer in his own request. This is what always happened at Dear Abby, too, right? You could always see the answer. It was obvious what you had to do. And here he mentioned that the ladder he used to climb out of the delusions of religion was biology. He went off to university and he studied science. This is not the only cure for religion, of course, but it's a darned effective one. Learning a little critical thinking, a little appreciation of the evidence, is a powerful tool that many of us have also used to win our freedom. So science is like an anti-parasitic treatment for the mind. And I recommend that you dose yourself with it regularly. What I would do in the case of this letter is I'd just ignore the nephew's nasty delusions, and they really are nasty, wicked, vile delusions, and start sending him science books. They'll sink in eventually. See, reality does a really fine job of countering religion if you just let yourself be exposed to it. But again, there's this weird failure to see what atheists are about. You see, from his letter you think, well, atheists must be unhappy. They must not have any fun. But I'm happy. I think most of you are happy. I think we've had a good time this weekend. We're not being tortured in hell, and we're not in a fear of hell. We're not worried about Jesus. We aren't the ones agonizing over imaginary torments. They are. They must be miserable. Instead, on our side, we're just pretty damn smug, which I kind of like. But that's pissing some people off. There's a bit of a backlash going on right now where serious theologians and philosophers are getting cranky about those rambunctious new atheists. You've heard of them? New atheists? This new special brand of atheist that's particularly wicked. The most common line is that we simply aren't bitter and serious enough, which is weird. We're accused of being bitter, but then you talk about the new atheists, suddenly they're not bitter enough. No, you gotta be like those old atheists, people like Nietzsche and Sartre. There was a really gloomy bunch. They appropriately viewed the death of God as a tragedy that led to nihilism and despair. And we need to be more like them, is the word from the ivory tower. So here's an example of this. This is from Scott Stevens. He's a religious reporter at ABC News. And he's telling us atheists how we are supposed to be. So this is a Christian who's giving us advice on how to live our lives. Isn't that kind of nice? His advice is that we are supposed to be austere and chastened and ascetic, as if. Now, what next? Is Bill here going to announce that the bar will be closed tonight? He better not. Okay, see. This is the atheist way. Oh, well, okay. Well, anyway, so this is how he says we're supposed to be, and then he tells us what the new atheists are like. I think many of the people in this room would probably consider themselves new atheists. That what we are is here's his story. By comparison, the new atheists look like sensationalist media pimps, smugly self-assured, profligate, unphilosophical, and brazenly ahistorical, whose immense popularity, thank you, says rather more about the illiteracy and moral impoverishment of Western audiences than it does about the relative merits of their arguments. Oh, you've been put in your place, haven't you? You illiterates and morally impoverished wankers, how dare you be happy? You've been relieved of your parasite. You should be miserable. For shame, you should be very solemn right now. Let's all see the sad faces. Yeah. Okay, now you're a good atheist if you're crying over God. Now, I'm not at all impressed with people who fail to see the obvious foolishness of religious belief and make these angry arguments that we're unaware of the brilliance of the claim that our purpose in life is to seek forgiveness from a cosmic tyrant for the purported fact that our many times great-grandmother ate the wrong piece of fruit, an act which led to millennia of death and destruction that could only end if we really, really believe that God killed himself temporarily for 3 days in an obscure provincial town in Palestine 2,000 years ago. But you see, we aren't the unsophisticated ones here. We're the ones with the goddamn superpower. Because we can see right through this. The fact that we can't accept these absurd, illogical stories is clear evidence that we're ahistorical and unphilosophical, which somehow gets equated with being a ninny. Okay, here's another one I got to give you. This is another quote from the philosopher David Hart. And he gets a little carried away in this one, but that's okay. Sometimes I do too. This is what he's saying here. The principal source of my melancholy, however, is my firm conviction that today's most obstreperous infidels lack the courage, moral intelligence, and thoughtfulness of their forefathers in faithlessness. What I find chiefly offensive about them is not that they are skeptics or atheists, rather it is that they are not skeptics at all, and have purchased their atheism cheaply with a sort of boorish arrogance that might make a man believe himself a great strategist because his tanks overwhelmed a town of unarmed peasants, or a great lover because he can afford the price of admission to a brothel. So long as one can choose one's conquest in advance, taking always the paths of least resistance, one can always imagine himself a Napoleon or a Casanova, and even better, the one without a Waterloo and the other without the clap. I think he's saying rude things about us. However, I kind of love the fact that in order to make his point against those tawdry atheists out there, people like you, he has to compare religion to a brothel and its practitioners to a mob of peasants. Which I will grant him. I will give him that one. That's perfectly reasonable. But can you tell what has gotten them so angry with us? We have announced the death of God, and they're showing up at the funeral expecting us to be in our best suits. See? Our faces set and sad, piously contemplating the loss of a significant cultural legacy. And instead, they find a wild Irish wake, full of laughter and happiness, with all of us dancing on the graves of the gods, at least when we aren't pissing on the tombstones. And there's no somber eulogy at all. Instead, we've got comedy routines mocking the absurdity of the deceased. And I'm looking at you, Brian. This is what we're doing. And they're baffled and they're annoyed by us. We're expressing our feelings about free of superstition, and we aren't sad. How can this be? Easy. We've seen where religion leads. Now, I know a bit about the views of roughly half of Americans and what they think of our origins and evolution and things like that. And if you notice there, about half of Americans think the Earth is around 10,000 years old and that God created them. I notice Canadians do a little better. Okay, twice as good. But when you hear these stories, what they actually believe, it's this comic opera where dunces and clowns like Ray Comfort and Ken Ham wallow in medieval theology. It's nonsense. Like this absurd fantasy this fantasy by Comfort. I'm not going to regret not sharing this belief. It's deserving of ridicule. This is what Ray Comfort believes about the evolution of sex. That we existed alongside each other for millions of years without having sex and instead reproducing by dividing in half. Yes, you say what? It's total insanity. This is Ray Comfort's version. This is the kind of stupidity we're dealing with. And somehow we're supposed to take this seriously and look at these people and say, well, yeah, you've got your views. We will tolerate and respect your beliefs. No, I'm sorry. These are beliefs that are deserving of ridicule. That's all they are going to get from me. That's all they should get from any of us. Now, it's not just silly creationists. There's more. I mean, this is from an online newspaper that was published a while back. And look what this guy is saying. He's saying God has told him that homosexuality is evil, right? That he's saying that all these things, that the world has to be destroyed in the end. He's welcoming it. This is crazy right there. And does he want homosexuals to feel isolated and ashamed to the point of suicide? Of course not. I want them to feel isolated and shamed to the point of repentance. This is the religious view. This is what they are promoting. Now, again, if we go back to Hart and these people who are arguing about us, shouldn't we be kind of cheerful as we see these views getting destroyed and disappear? They're not gone yet, obviously, but we're working on it. And we should be working on it. That these are views that should make us angry, that we should feel bad about these things. It's social policies led by religious conservatives who want to claim the mantle of God in order to deny civil rights to our fellow citizens. It's this kind of Bronze Age mentality that should be conquered by education and knowledge, and yet it persists and stalks the halls of powers and leads our countries to disaster and grief. And I'm angry about this, and I should be. Why should I feel any remorse at all if we beat back this evil? I didn't weep when apartheid went down. I'm not upset when racism is rejected. And I'm not about to grieve for the grandest excuse for intolerance and tribalism that has ever existed. I'm also not going to feel remorse because we have something to replace those antique superstitions. It's called truth. I kind of like truth. We also have these things called reason and science that we value. So this is another reason to be smug and overjoyed, because instead of limiting ourselves to the shallow myths of an old holy book, we actually look at nature itself and ask ever deeper questions and develop ever more powerful tools to answer questions we didn't even know to ask a decade ago. So this image, everyone recognizes it, right? Yeah, oh, of course. What this is a larval zebrafish, and it's a reminder to me. You don't recognize it? Well, it's significant to me because when I started my academic career as a graduate student in the 1980s, this is what I studied, actually. I studied the organization of cells and neurons in the brain of the larval zebrafish. And at that time, what we did is we used these classic old neuroanatomical techniques, these old staining methods, and we'd section and slice and take these things apart piece by piece to puzzle out what each cell was and where it was connected. And I know these cells pretty well. I see this picture, and I recognize those guys. I could name a bunch of those cells. I know the people who named those cells. That's my connection. This is the stuff I used to do. I got a PhD for this stuff. But look at it now. This is one prep, one single embryo that was processed, treated with an assortment of molecular tools to label the cells, all these different colors, and you get something like this in one sweep. This is a year of my life as a graduate student I'm looking at there that you can do in one day in an experiment nowadays, which is pretty darn impressive. You not only get something rich in scientific information, but you also get something that I think is pretty darn beautiful too. So we're getting truth and beauty all in one wonderful piece. And this is what we want. We want truth. Now, scientific truth is not something absolute. I have no illusion that I possess a universal, deeper knowledge of the world than everyone else. What I do have, though, is a tool, the methods of science, that has been proven effective at extracting deeper knowledge. This image would not be produced by the methods of faith. They didn't even care what went on in larval zebrafish. Come on. We would not have the microscopes, we would not have the fluorophores, we would not have the molecular knowledge of the nature of these cells and these tissues without the gift of open inquiry and exploration that science has given us. So when I say truth, I do not mean that I know how this brain works. I mean that we have seen the unimaginable complexity of the structure and we can eagerly explore further. This is what we expect of science. Now earlier today, Stuart Beckman showed you something. In passing, he showed you the frontispiece for Francis Bacon's masterwork, the Novus Organum. But he didn't tell you what the picture was all about. It was a woodcut of a ship setting sail through the Pillars of Hercules on its way to explore new worlds. It's a wonderfully evocative image if you take a moment and look at it. And this is what we're seeing here in this picture. Modern science really does open up new vistas, and not just in geography, but in biology and physics and chemistry and geology and space science. It's all there in front of us, and we're setting sail deeper into this knowledge. So what are we supposed to be sad about? We're leaving behind the cheesy gimmicks of humanity's childhood to see a greater and even more exciting reality. What we as scientists and skeptics have is a flexibility of mind and an appreciation of novelty that allows us to encounter new problems and address them in novel ways. We respond to reality, not dusty dogma. And that is essential as we encounter new problems in society, as we do now and always will. How are you going to address the challenges of climate change, new diseases, and other uncertainties of the future? Are you going to pray for answers, or are you going to do the hard work of actually seeking the truth? So to the believers, I can only say this. We're here, we don't believe, and we've got science and reason on our side. Get used to it. And furthermore, we're going to be really happy about it all too. Okay, I'll stop there and answer any questions.